Good evening, everyone. Glad to be with you tonight. Sorry for the delay, but maybe we gave you a little extra time to watch some of the cable news networks and catch up on the election info. I'm sure you're interested in all that. And I guess we're competing tonight with all that, going head-to-head with CNN and Fox News and some of the others. So we'll see how well our ratings go tonight. All right, last week we left off with Acts chapter 23. And we left off with verse 12. And before we get to verse 12, let's do a little bit of review to kind of set the context of what's going on. Paul had to be rescued. I'm going to say he had to be rescued once again. This time the commander had to come to his rescue, and he had to literally be rescued from a hostile courtroom. If you will remember, Paul had been on trial. They were trying to get to the bottom of why a riot had erupted at the temple because they had accused him of bringing a Gentile in there and et cetera, and we talked at length about that for the last few weeks. But anyway, he's on trial. He's in front of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish Supreme Court of the day, made up of both Pharisees and Sadducees, and he's there facing them, and his life is most likely on the line. This is the same group of people that killed Philip, the first Christian martyr. And anyway, he's there, and while he's there, he says, "I'm on trial today." First of all, he said, "I'm a Pharisee, and I'm on trial today because of my hope in the resurrection." Well, that was like throwing a grenade into the courtroom, a theological grenade, because the Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection, but the Pharisees staunchly believed in the resurrection. And what Paul ended up doing is taking the attention off himself and putting it on that theological issue of the resurrection. And so the Pharisees started saying, "Hey, wait a minute. He's on trial for the resurrection. Well, we believe in the resurrection. What's going on here?" Next thing you know, a sharp dispute broke out in the courtroom, and it actually went violent, and the commander had to come and rescue Paul because he thought Paul was going to be torn to pieces. So it went violent, it escalated, it got bad. So once again, Paul is rescued from a hostile situation. And Jesus comes to him that night after he's taken from the courtroom, and they take him back to the barracks. And Jesus comes to him in a nighttime visit, which is kind of cool. And Jesus says to him, "Take courage." So I'm going to infer from that Paul was maybe lacking a little courage. Not that he was a coward, but he was probably a little bit afraid because he probably literally almost got himself torn to pieces. There were probably some pulling on him this way and others pulling that way. It was very violent. Anyway, Jesus comes to him and says, "Take courage. As you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so you must also testify about me in Rome." So keep in mind, we're in Jerusalem. So Jesus is letting him know that, hey, you're not going to die here. No matter what they throw at you, no matter what happens, you're going to go all the way to Rome to testify about me. So Paul could take some comfort in that. He's not going to die. So that's the context. So let's pick up with verse 12 in Acts 23. It says, the next morning, so that starts off. So Jesus had come to him in the night visit, and it says the next morning, some Jews formed a conspiracy and bound themselves with an oath not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. More than 40 men were involved in this plot. They went to the chief priests and the elders and said, "We have taken a solemn oath not to eat anything until we have killed Paul. Now then, you and the Sanhedrin petition the commander to bring him before you on the pretext of wanting a more accurate information about his case. We are ready to kill him before he gets here." But when the son of Paul's sister heard this plot, he went to the barracks and told Paul. So let's stop there for just a moment. Here we find a plot being hatched, and the Sanhedrin gets in on this. I'm going to say this is probably some of the same group that started the riot in the temple in the first place, that accused Paul of bringing a Gentile in there. And Paul got rescued, and then he gave a speech, and then, they tried to kill him. And anyway, so they're not finished. They're not going to give up easily. So about 40 plus of them get together, and they make a vow that they will not eat or drink anything until they kill Paul. And the plan was this: they were saying to the Sanhedrin, they went to the Jewish court, back to the Supreme Court of the day, and said, have Paul transferred back here under the pretense that you want to get more information about him. And while he's on his way over, we'll just ambush him and kill him. And so that's the plan. And most likely what they're trying to do is they're probably going to try to stab him to death. You may be thinking, well, John, where are you getting that from? Well, a lot of scholars say that most likely the method here was going to be to stab Paul with daggers. And there was actually a group of Jewish assassins back then called the Sicarii, and what they would do is they would kind of blend in with the crowd, and when they wanted to take somebody out, they would conceal. He had a conceal and carry permit, I guess. No, they had a concealed dagger under their cloak, and they would get in close, and then when they wanted to assassinate somebody, they would just stab them, and then they'd kind of melt back into the crowd. It was kind of the method, and they were very fanatical killers. They were sort of a Jewish group of people that did that sort of thing. Was this that exact group? I don't know, but it sure sounds like something they would do. Notice it said they put themselves under a curse. That literally reads they put themselves under an anathema. And an anathema means, it says oath here in the NIV, but anathema means curse. So they were kind of like saying, God, punish us with a very severe infliction if we do not kill Paul. And to show you how serious we are, God, we're going to go on a fast. We're not going to eat or drink anything. Now, that's very serious when you don't even drink anything. Fast is one thing. You're taking it up another level when you don't drink anything either. So they're serious about this, man. They're saying, God, punish us, inflict us with some kind of pain if we do not kill this guy. And this fast is a way of saying that food's the very thing that sustains life. And they're saying our desire to kill Paul is more important to us than life itself. That's kind of what they're saying. So you kind of get a feel of how dedicated they are to killing Paul. And again, most likely probably just going to try to stab him to death. And if you're like me, you're thinking, okay, well, if Paul's being brought from the barracks back to the courtroom, and y'all are going to try to go in there where the soldiers are guarding him, and you're going to try to stick him with a dagger? I mean, you're not going to get away with that without any casualties. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So they're probably prepared to take some casualties. They're probably thinking, yeah, we're probably going to, some of us are probably going to get killed in the process because we're not going to be able to overtake all these guards and get to Paul and kill him. So we might have to kill a few guards in the process. So they're willing to take some casualties to get to Paul. But again, I mean, these guys are fanatics. They're not going to eat or drink until they kill Paul. I don't know what he did to make them so mad. All he was doing is preaching Jesus. I guess that has a way of getting some people really upset.
Well, it kind of reminds me of what we were talking about last time. These people seem to be always on edge. They seem to always be ready to just jump at the first little sign of discomfort, or the first sign of being wrong, or the first sign of some type of conflict with what they think in their ideology. As soon as they think that's in conflict, man, they're just ready to jump right into a riot. They're ready to jump in there and beat someone, even to death. And this is Paul. They've done this and stirring things up in Asia Minor, which we've already talked about in the past. And these same people are again here in Jerusalem and doing that in the temple. And you know that these people are from the same flock or the same lock of people, like these same people with the that have been in the temple in Asia Minor. So it seems like as soon as something's like on edge, we need to get rid of you. We need to eliminate you when it comes to stoning, or you need to be beaten.
Well, one thing I was kind of thinking about this. One thing I like about these people, what is there to like? They took religion seriously. I mean, I feel like we live in an age today where people don't really take their faith that seriously. They're certainly, I mean, fasting, how many would do that today?
Right.
Or how many people are committed to actually put their life on the line? So I kind of like that they're this committed, but they're wrong. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Well, we see this in Islamic countries today, these people they take their faith really seriously. But imagine what could happen if Christians started taking their faith this seriously. I mean, we could turn this world upside down for Jesus.
Yeah.
So I like that about them, but they're wrong.
Yeah.
And what's got them so upset, another thing I like about them is they do care about beliefs and doctrine and things like that. So that's another thing I think people need to have some conviction about what they believe.
Right.
And not just whatever, just go wherever, here or there, and who has the best coffee and all that kind of stuff. We really need to know why we believe what we believe and have some conviction about it. And they're very upset with Paul, if you back up, because they thought he was teaching against their traditions and against Moses. So they took their religion very seriously. And they were wrong, but I do like how they're convicted. Okay,
right?
but they're messed up.
To be fair, there's a connection there, because Paul even says he was zealous for the law, and look what he did. He went around and he stoned certain Christians. He threw them in jail. He said, I was the most zealous person among you. There was no one above me in what I was doing. And the Sanhedrin knew that, and that's why he got papers to even go to other cities besides Jerusalem. So there's a connection between probably the way Paul, and look how much Paul got done too. So once he became a Christian.
But you can see how they're very convicted in their faith, and they really believe what they believe. It's just that they believe wrong. Their belief system they're wrong. They've rejected Jesus, and of course, when you reject Jesus, that opens the door for all kind of misbehavior.
Yeah,
and then they've just rejected Jesus, and they've rejected God's grace and His forgiveness and love and mercy and all that. But
the one thing that I'll add as a criticism to them, it's not about their zealous nature. It's about the lack of patience that seems to be going on here. We can't wait for justice here. We're just going to get in there and we're going to eliminate him. So God is a God of justice. God wants to know the truth. I mean, God is truth. And so and they're quick to anger. So even in Old Testament, none of that is prescribed to be quick to anger. As soon as something doesn't go right, let's just go ahead and murder someone in a court case. That's not justice. So God's not for any of that. But I'm with you. Like when it comes to their zealousness and taking things serious, I commend that.
And I guess to put it in a nutshell, is they see Paul as some kind of heretic who's perverting their faith. So they're like, we got to get rid of this guy. And we're so serious, God, may you put a curse on us if we don't get this guy and take him out. They actually think they're doing God a favor. So again, they're messed up, they're wrong, but I kind of admire their commitment to God, but it's just misguided.
Yeah.
I can say the same thing about radical Islam today. And I've heard people say, yeah, look how they pray, man. They bow down, they're all serious. Yeah. And they take their faith seriously. Yeah, they do, but they're wrong though.
Yeah.
I mean, according to Christianity. Because they don't believe Jesus died on the cross. So don't type in, John, they believe in Jesus. Yeah, they believe in Jesus. They don't believe he died on the cross for the sins of the world.
Yeah.
They don't believe he resurrected from the dead because they don't believe he died on the cross. So anyway, you can admire the zeal of people, but we got to be after the truth.
Yeah.
And ultimately, these people, like some belief systems today, they're wrong. So they're gonna try to kill Paul, and they think that'll help preserve their religion, I guess. And so they've hatched this plot to request that he comes back to the courtroom. And again, the Sanhedrin is in on this because they agree to it. This is the Supreme Court of the land.
Yeah, we're talking about a little corruption going on there.
What does that say about them?
Yeah,
they actually go along with this thing. You would think.
Is that about true justice?
Yeah.
I mean, they're like you said, this is the court. Like Israel got in trouble for these kind of things, not looking for justice for people, whether they're rich or poor or whoever they are, they're a foreigner or they're a resident in Israel. So again, they're choosing and picking what they want to pick out of all this, but then, and they'll be super zealous about it. But then there they are completely glancing over how you got a couple people over here. They're like, yeah, you want Paul dead too. So let's not even have a court case or any of that. Probably knowing that he's going to get free because he didn't do anything to die. So, let's do this because we'll get what we want essentially. We're going to kill him, eliminate the enemy, the person that we don't want.
I mean, had they done their duty when these guys came to him with this conspiracy, they should have said, okay, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder.
Yeah.
Okay. But instead, they're like, okay, sounds good to us. We'll invite him on over. You know, we'll send for Paul, and then you guys can get him before he gets here. But make sure you do it pretty far away from the courtroom so it don't look like we're in on it. So that was probably how it went down. So I got probably getting their daggers ready, and they're just going to kind of ease in and get closer and closer. And then all these daggers coming out, and that'll be the end of Paul.
Yeah.
But the plot is spoiled. If you notice, it said verse 16 of our passage. Let's look at that again. It says, but when the son of Paul's sister heard of this plot, he went into the barracks and told Paul. Well, we learned that Paul has a sister here. It's the first time I've heard of that in Scripture other than this place. And she has a son who would be Paul's nephew. And somehow he heard of the plot. Verse 17, then Paul called one of the centurions and said, take this young man to the commander. He has something to tell him. So he took him to the commander. The centurion said, Paul, the prisoner sent for me and asked me to bring this young man to you because he has something to tell you. The commander took the young man by the hand, drew him aside, and asked, what is it you want to tell me? He said, some Jews have agreed to ask you to bring Paul before the Sanhedrin tomorrow on the pretext of wanting more information about him. Don't give in to them, because more than 40 of them are willing to ambush him, or waiting in ambush for him. They have taken an oath not to eat or drink until they have killed him. They are ready now, waiting for your consent to their request. The commander dismissed the young man with this warning. Do not tell anyone that you have reported this to me. So here we go. This young man somehow overhears the plot. Now, we don't know exactly how he overheard it. We can speculate that, maybe he's walking down the street and he walks by an open window, and they're in there, hatching this plot to get rid of Paul. Maybe the door's open. Maybe he's just some little kid standing there in their midst, and they just don't think, well, who's he going to tell? He don't know anybody, and they don't realize it's Paul's nephew. Or maybe some have suggested that Paul had some old Pharisee friends that tipped off the nephew. That's how he found out.
There's another one that this is the one that I think, at least, is that since Paul has a sister and she has a son, well, that means he has a brother-in-law. So some people also suggest that since Paul is a Pharisee, his family is connected with Pharisees, that this brother-in-law is on the Sanhedrin, and that because of the son and obviously the closeness between the son and the mother, because that's his wife and that's his kid, they're in relation to this whole situation, and that they catch wind of it, and the son goes and tells Paul. And for me, that kind of makes sense between the closeness. Paul's a Pharisee. Yeah. He says, Paul specifically says that he's a descendant of Pharisees. So that means this runs in the family. So what makes you think that it doesn't run with the sister and her family as well? They're well connected with Pharisees. So, which brings up a good topic with Paul. That
he says, I am a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee.
Yep. Yeah. And so that almost talks to his character for a minute, though, that Paul, despite even having family members that are against him, and even in this instance, obviously, in cahoots with killing him, he's still standing for his faith despite that. So, and we don't know obviously where his sister stands, but possibly she's against Paul as well. We don't get any support stories when it comes to Scripture. Any stories about his family coming to talk with him or in association. It's possible the whole family just threw him right out. And so when he left being involved in being a zealous Jew and became a zealous Christian, that he had to lose the family ties along with it, which, and here it's like possibly being killed. This is on the table at least. So,
yeah, and the way it says, but when the son of Paul's sister heard of this plot, he may have heard it from somebody like you're talking about. May have heard it from his dad or some friend or something.
I could be speculating with the brother-in-law. It could be another father or uncle or
a Pharisee friend, but it could have been,
But it shows that it's got to be somewhat close to the close to the belt here. It feels like I don't get this. I don't get the feeling this was a coincidence, but the son is just walking by.
Let's talk a little bit about this in a minute.
Yeah.
Anyway, he goes into the barracks to tell Paul. So we see here Paul's in solitary confinement, locked down. He can't visit with anybody. And there was a kind of what was called protective custody back then. The charges, no firm charges had been laid against him, and since he was a Roman citizen, he would have been allowed to have visitors, and that's what gives his nephew access to him. And plus, sometimes Rome could have done things like this to allow visitors to come where they could maybe eavesdrop and hear what's being said, and that might help them and build their case. But anyway, he's allowed to come in, and then he reports this to Uncle Paul, and then Paul tells the centurion to take the young man to the commander, and he's got something to tell him. And so he does take him to the commander. And notice in verse 19 it says, the commander took the young man by the hand and drew him aside and asked, "What is it you want to tell me?" This designation, young man, this may surprise some of y'all. In the Greek language and culture, a young man could be as old as 35 years old. I don't know if we tend to think of a 35-year-old as a young man. I guess we might. I don't know.
I guess it depends on who's speaking. If there's someone that's 60 and 70, they're probably going to think he's a young man. So I guess it's all, context, I guess.
But most likely he's a boy because of what's said there in verse 19. So the commander took the young man by the hand.
Yeah.
Now that'd be kind of strange if he was 35.
Yeah.
Takes him by the hand, says,
"Come on over here with me over here."
That would be creepy to say the least. Okay. He's probably not 25, and he's probably not, 19 or 18.
Yeah.
He's not old enough to be a soldier either. So he's probably just a little boy, and he's probably scared.
Yeah.
Or he's uneasy, and kind of, I can imagine him kind of looking around and being nervous.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a boy in the mall. It's like, "Hey, we're going to go over here, son." Something like that. It's like he needs to be guided to where we're going. It's, "You need to be with me," kind of thing. Like a grown adult, it's like, well, he's not going to be trailing around.
If you were a boy, would you be a little uneasy if you just found out about this plot to kill Uncle Paul?
Yeah.
They have no qualms about it. They're under they're not going to eat or drink till they get him. And he may know about the daggers and the knives and all that kind of stuff. And he's thinking, "I could die too," So
yeah,
he's probably a little on edge.
And he's around this foreign army too. He's probably not familiar with being around Romans from another country, and there are a bunch of military guys around him. Yeah. So, that would probably unnerve you as well. That would be like China invades us, and then they have their own military, and it's like, there's a kid walking in there, and they're probably speaking of foreign languages, and you hear a bunch of things, seeing different sights that you've never seen before. It's like you don't know anything about all this. This is like weird territory to you. So
I don't know. It's kind of a tender passage. And the commander took the young man by the hand, drew him aside, and asked, "What is it you want to tell me?" You can just kind of picture that.
Yeah. I don't see a grown man in my mindset, at least in that context.
Most likely a boy, yeah. So he goes ahead and gives him the information, tells him about the plot and what he knows about it. And by the way, I found this interesting. According to one source, the most let me back up just a minute here. If he were alive today, exposing this conspiracy would be something that needed to be done, because you can actually today, if you know of a conspiracy, supposedly what I read, if you know of a conspiracy and you keep it to yourself and you don't tell the authorities, you can also be implicated in that you are part of the conspiracy because you didn't report it. If you knew about it and you didn't report it.
I've heard about that. Yeah, I don't remember where I've heard that before, but I've heard that before though.
Yeah, he was acting within the law had he been living today. I also found this interesting. According to one source, the most common conspiracy crime today is the conspiracy to commit murder. And the second is money laundering. And both crimes can earn you up to 25 years in prison and punitive fines up to $250,000. So for those of you out there listening, if you know of a conspiracy, you better report it. You could get in big trouble.
Yeah, 25 years.
Consider a conspirator yourself. So be a crime stopper like Paul's nephew. You know, he reported this crime. He reported this conspiracy. Seriously, now this kind of goes back to what you said earlier, Kyle. Here's the question for y'all tonight. Do you believe this young man just happened to be at the right place at the right time? Or do you think God directed him to be there? So let me ask you that again. Do you believe this young man just happened to be at the right place at the right time? Or did God direct him to be there? In other words, was he part of God's plan? Or is this just kind of a coincidence? Now, as you're thinking about that, let me back you up to Paul's nighttime visit by Jesus the night before. He says, "Take courage, as you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so you must also testify in Rome." So on the one hand, you've got this plot in Jerusalem to get rid of Paul. Jesus said, "Don't worry, you're going all the way to Jerusalem. Rome, to testify about me. You know, thousands of miles away." So that's God letting him know that's the plan. You're not going to die here. I got plans for you to go to Rome. Okay, and then the next day, Paul's nephew just happens to overhear of the plot and reports it. And as we see in a minute, Paul's going to get rescued again.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
That's a good point. I mean, that's right in the context of this situation where Jesus is showing up, and you know you're fearful. You're not sure what's going to be happening here, and reassuring him you're not going to die here. You're going to be in Rome, which means your end point isn't here for sure. So you're not going to die here for sure. And what it sounds like to me, at least, is God's like, I'm here, I'm for you, and I'm going to make sure that you're going to get on down to Rome. That's what I hear. So I'm.
Anybody give us any answers? What they think?
No answers.
No answers.
Not yet.
Okay. Well, I'll share with you what I think. I think God has a plan, and his plan is for Paul to testify about Jesus in Rome. I know that's the case because he's already told Paul that in a vision. And it appears to me that this little boy is being used in a big way by God to help preserve Paul's life to accomplish God's purpose. So God's got a plan, and you might say the Jews are trying to mess up God's plan, but God uses this little guy as a tool to get Paul out of there and get him on down the road toward Rome. But this little guy is used by God in a big way.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I see it here. So I know God wants him in Rome, and this, like if the little guy hadn't overheard it and exposed the plot, maybe Paul would have gotten killed.
Yeah.
So it's like God came to the rescue through a little kid. What do you think?
I mean, when we read it, it's a very unexpected turn well, it's not even just that he overheard it. I think that's absolutely a part of it. But the part that amazes me more isn't the even overhearing part. It's the fact that this boy by himself is going to go to this foreign army. All right, we know how kids generally are. They're not going to go somewhere, first of all, without their parent. Now that he's apparently going to go to this foreign army that's known as the enemy of his people for generations, and even the assassins that you're talking about, the Sicarii, like they're only doing that because they hate Rome. They were known to assassinate many people in the Roman army. Like it was an anti-Rome assassination. I mean, that's what they were all about. And so you get drilled in your head that these people are your enemies. They're going to kill you. They want the worst for us. They slaughter our people. Pilate was known for slaughtering tons of crowds of Jews before. And he goes up and just so happens, I'm just going to stroll along to this foreign army and I'm going to tell them, even if he knew, he could have kept it to himself. So he got the information, and then he had enough courage to go up to this foreign army and go and divulge to the commander over all of the armies, not maybe worrying about, oh, hey, they could maybe kill me. Are they even on Paul's side? I mean, I don't really know.
But why a little kid? Why not an angel, or why not some adult, or what? It's just
What is is it Jesus says, "I take what's foolish in the eyes of men," and I can't remember the full
some
quote.
Unexpected things are going on here. Like the world would do things one way, but God says, "No, I don't do things like the world does things. My ways are not man's ways." He says that. So
Yeah.
I just want to draw everybody's attention to how God can use even little children to accomplish His purposes, and we know that God certainly values children. I mean, we know that. Of course, we try to value children here at this church.
Yeah.
We have a children's minister and a youth minister, So, and we're not that big of a church. Somebody might say, well, man, y'all aren't big enough to have all that. Well, we're making a point to try to have all that.
Yeah, because it's important.
Because God values children, and so we value children too. And God uses children. And so we want to be children friendly around here, young people friendly. And I just think, like with Jesus, for example, when they were trying to bring the little children to Jesus so He could, bless them and pray for them and hold them and all that, His own disciples said, no, we don't have time for all this. We don't have time for kids. And back in that day and time, people like Jesus were thought to be too important to be fooling around with kids, We don't have time for that. But he quickly corrected them by saying, let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. That's a heavy statement. So Jesus took time for kids, and He liked kids. And so I think if Jesus valued, my mom always told me, don't call them kids, that's a goat. So I have trouble. I hear her and tell my mind saying that. She called them children. Jesus took time for the children. And I think we should value them as well.
Yeah.
And apparently God values them, or He wouldn't say a kingdom belongs to such as these. In fact, He tells us unless we become like little children, we're not going to even enter the kingdom of heaven. So let that soak in.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I had thought about is, as we're talking about this on the podcast, we bring this up where we went over Josiah, and Josiah is very young, and when it comes to, he became king when it comes to, make sure, he was about 8 or 6, so he's not very old. So he becomes king extremely young. And so he takes on a lot of responsibility in that. And then as he's, about 16 years old, he takes, he's a teenager. He's taking on a lot of responsibility. He's ridding Israel of idolatry at this point. And then, later on in his 20s, he does even more to get rid of idolatry. He tries to get the law installed in Israel back again, and when it comes to the faith, and even more is his late 20s. So, all of those are young age when it comes
Daniel
to...
too. Daniel's probably a teenager.
Right. And, people see that as, you just need to wait until there's a perception sometimes that you just need to go crazy when you're young. You're really not going to do much in ministry or work. And, that sometimes there's a term where, we're preparing them to be the church one day. Yeah. I hear that a lot. There's a statement with that, but I don't believe that's true. And that's,
they're the future of the church. And I heard somebody say, no, they're the present.
Yeah, they are the present.
Yeah.
Like one thing that we're having going on at church right now, just everyone, knows, like Eden, for instance, she's going up there and she's stepping up and singing from everyone right now. Like, some people would think, oh, going on as an adult, the people are like, oh, going on stage, like, whoa. It's like, I'm going to, I wouldn't do that. And, certainly wouldn't think someone young is going to go do that. And look what we got going on here. And, Eden's up there and we're very blessed by that. Someone who's younger can serve the Lord.
Right. In a big way, in an important way. So,
yeah.
So young people out there, if you're watching, keep in mind God can use you, and if you will surrender yourself to Him, I'm sure He'll use you.
Yeah.
In ways that you never thought He could. That goes for anybody. God can do far more with you than you think He can.
Right. Yeah. And that has to do with all our hindrances. Youth is one hindrance, but even if you get older, you could say, well, I'm not good in speaking in public. I'm not good at praying in public with other people, or I'm not very fluent in my speech. Moses did the same thing, and and apparently Moses had some kind of speech impediment, and there he is giving excuses to God where he's like, this is a legitimate, I'm probably stuttering a lot, and God's like, no, sorry, Moses, it doesn't work that way. I'm going to use you anyways. Mm-hmm. So, and there's Moses, like 90 years old. So, and to talk about an age,
he's about 80, wasn't he?
80 years old. Yeah. That's probably right.
But what I'm thinking of Timothy too. Remember, and Paul even says, don't let people look down on you because you're young.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how old he was exactly, but he was a young person that God used in a big way. And God's using a young guy here to rescue Paul from this conspiracy. And so let's pick up with verse 23 here in Acts chapter 23. Then he called 2 of the centurions and ordered them, "Get ready a detachment of 200 soldiers, 75 horsemen, and 200 spearmen, to go to Caesarea at 9 tonight. Provide horses for Paul so that he may be taken safely to Governor Felix." He wrote a letter as follows: Claudius Lysias, to His Excellency Governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jews, and they were about to kill him, but I came with my troops and rescued him, for I have learned that he is a Roman citizen. I wanted to know why they were accusing him, so I brought him to their Sanhedrin. I found that the accusation had to do with questions about their law, but there was no charge against him that deserved death or imprisonment. When I was informed of a plot to be carried out against him, I sent him to you at once. I also ordered his accusers to present to you their case against him. So the soldiers, carrying out their orders, took Paul with them during the night and brought him as far as Antipatris. The next day, they let the cavalry go on with him while they returned to the barracks. When the cavalry arrived at Caesarea, they delivered the letter to the governor and handed Paul over to him. The governor read the letter and asked what province he was from. Learning that he was from Cilicia, he said, "I will hear your case when your accusers get here." Then he ordered that Paul be kept under guard in Herod's palace. Okay, so let's go to the map. So we're here in Jerusalem. And when he learns of the plot in the night, he takes some soldiers, quite a few soldiers too. I don't know if you noticed, 200 soldiers, 75 horsemen, and 200 spearmen. So that's I think they wouldn't have any trouble handling about 40 religious fanatics.
Yeah,
want to kill them. So anyway, they slip out at night, and they're waiting to ambush Paul. But probably the next day. But in the night, here we go. We go up to this place called Antipatris right here, and when they get here, I guess it's roughly halfway because the destination's up here in Caesarea. So about the halfway mark, the rest of the troops go back to Jerusalem, and it sounds like they got a couple of horses for Paul, so he probably gets on the fresh horse here the next day, and then with a 75 cavalrymen, 75 horsemen. Mm-hmm. So they go on. The rest of them have gone back to the barracks, and Paul with the cavalry goes on up here to Caesarea, and he's kept under arrest there as he awaits for his accusers to come up there and accuse him. But long story short, Paul is delivered from this plot to kill him in Jerusalem by these people that have taken a vow to kill him. I can't help but wonder, did they just starve to death? These 40 men that had vowed never to eat or drink again, they just starved to death because Paul got away.
Yeah, John, that's one thing I thought about, man? Was it's like, so what was the end of their story? I kind of wanted to hear about that. Like, did they get together and they're like,
up and die, I guess.
Were they like, oh man, guys, well, this didn't pan out, so like, I mean, what do we do now? I mean,
oh gosh,
we just not eat again, or
day 3 and I hadn't had a drink of water.
Yeah, are we just gonna take it back? Just be like, whatever, or did God just straight up strike them down since they has a curse for themselves? I mean, I don't know.
Y'all said, Billy, for me to put a curse on you.
Yeah, I just wonder if they were watching the sailboat as Paul will eventually get there, goes off to Rome, and there they are, like 30 days without food, and just like, oh my gosh, what do we do? Build a boat or something.
So the escape was made, and Paul's nephew was a part of God's plan. So I just want to leave everybody with that idea that God used a little boy in a big way, and he can still do the same thing today. So with that, let's go ahead and close with a word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, we just thank you for this story tonight that we were able to look at Paul's rescue and see how that you rescued him. And I pray, God, that one thing we could learn from this story is that you do have a sovereign plan, and you do use young people today to accomplish your purposes. And obviously you value young people, and I pray, God, that all of us watching tonight, listening, would learn to value young people as well, and and realize that they can be used by you in a big way. And I just pray, God, that we would always be a church that's young people friendly. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.